The last time I visited my mother's house, I found a jar of mixed nuts on her kitchen counter, her go-to snack since she turned 70. They're good for my heart, she smiled, offering me a handful. But something didn't sit right. That same week, she had complained of numb fingers, rising blood pressure, and another forgetful episode where she left the stove on. I dug deeper. What I found shocked me. One of the healthy nuts she was eating every day, one praised in low-carb diet blogs, was quietly worsening her liver function and clouding her memory. And she's not alone. Thousands of seniors are unknowingly harming their hearts, kidneys, and brains with foods they believe are helping them. Here's the bold truth. Not all nuts are good for aging bodies. In fact, some are quietly poisoning us. This isn't just about nutrition. It's about trust, clarity, and the freedom to age without fear. Because what we eat isn't just about survival, it's about dignity. And we deserve to know the difference between fuel and slow harm. Let's begin. Part 1. The hidden danger in your pantry. I remember standing in the grocery aisle holding a small bag of peanuts labeled Heart Healthy Snack. The label was comforting, familiar. It felt like a promise. Something about it reminded me of my dad. He kept a jar of dry roasted peanuts on his recliner table, a habit he called my little insurance policy. But what if I told you that very jar may have quietly shortened his life? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Peanuts aren't nuts, they're legumes. And unlike almonds or walnuts, which grow above ground, peanuts grow underground, where they're far more likely to absorb moisture and mold. That's where aflatoxins come, in tiny, invisible mycotoxins that can accumulate in your liver over time and slowly erode its function. Now, imagine this. You're 73. You take a daily blood thinner. You eat a handful of salted peanuts while watching your favorite evening show. Seems harmless, right? Except peanuts are loaded with vitamin K, known to interfere with common anticoagulants like warfarin. Your blood becomes harder to regulate. Bruises show up mysteriously. Your doctor blames your age. But the real culprit, a healthy snack you never questioned. The tragic irony. Peanuts often come dry, roasted high heat, treated producing acrylamide, a compound that's been linked to neural degeneration. Yes, the very nuts seniors turn to for comfort, maybe fueling their forgetfulness, joint pain, and more. I've spoken to dozens of families where the story is eerily similar. The father with rising liver enzymes, the grandmother with inflamed joints and chronic fatigue. It always seemed like age until they switched up one small habit. Here's the lesson. Familiar doesn't mean safe, and popular doesn't mean smart. One retired biochemist I interviewed described peanuts as the Trojan horse of the senior diet. They sneak in under the guise of tradition and comfort, but bring inflammation, blood pressure complications, and metabolic distress in their wake. Let's go deeper. There's a scientific term, inflammagen, used to describe chronic low-grade inflammation that silently accelerates aging. Peanuts, with their imbalance of omega-6 fatty acids and absence of anti-inflammatory omega-3s, are prime suspects in fueling this hidden fire. And inflammation isn't just pain. It's the erosion of memory, the fog of fatigue, the ache in your knees. Of course, this isn't a campaign against nostalgia. I get it. That peanut butter sandwich might be the last thing that still tastes like childhood. But sentiment can't protect you from oxidative stress. And here's a twist: even natural peanut butters, unsweetened, unsalted, still oxidize easily if stored improperly, especially in warmer climates or for long periods. And for anyone who's ever heard everything in moderation, I'd offer this challenge. Define moderation when your gut lining is thinning your detox. Pathways are slower and your medication list reads like a novel. Peanuts aren't evil, but for seniors, they're a loaded weapon disguised as comfort food. In the next part, I'll reveal a nut that looks harmless, almost cute, but spikes your blood sugar faster than white bread and carries a hidden danger that nutrition labels never warn you about. Hold on. Part 2. The 4 best nuts for seniors and why they work. The first time I truly looked at a cashew, I was sitting at a cafe in Arizona, watching a woman in her 70s gently pour a small handful into a paper cup. She smiled at me and said, "Doctor told me these are better than cookies." She meant well, but I couldn't help but think, if only she knew. Here's the thing most people miss. Cashews are charming, smooth, buttery, and addictive. But charm doesn't equal safety, especially not for an aging body. Let me paint the picture clearly. Cashews are deceptively high in carbohydrates, more than most other nuts. That means they spike blood sugar fast, and for the 25% of American seniors living with diabetes, or the nearly 50% who are pre-diabetic, this is no small matter. It's a sugar bomb wrapped in a health food costume. But blood sugar isn't the only concern. Cashews are packed with oxalates, compounds that can bind to calcium in your gut and block its absorption. In your 30s, that might be fine. But after 65, when bone loss accelerates and every milligram of calcium matters, it's a risk you can't afford to ignore. Even more surprising, cashews are one of the few nuts that can worsen digestion for the elderly. Why? Because they contain enzyme inhibitors that make protein harder to digest at a stage of life when your digestive system is already slowing down. It's like handing your stomach a puzzle it no longer has the energy to solve. And here's a weird truth. Cashews must be heavily processed to remove urushiol, the same chemical found in poison ivy. That creamy handful you just ate, it's gone through boiling, roasting, steaming, and still may contain trace elements of that irritant. Ever notice a scratchy throat after snacking on a few too many? That's not your imagination. That's a warning. Now, let's talk about the mental trap. Most seniors, understandably, avoid sugar-laden desserts, but overconsume healthy snacks like cashews, thinking the label grants immunity. That creamy texture and mild sweetness, it leads to overeating. And because cashews lack the fiber that regulates satiety, you keep going. A retired dietitian once told me, cashews are the cheesecake of the nut world. Sounds dramatic until you look at their glycemic impact and how quickly they disappear by the fistful. If you've been eating cashews every day, this isn't a call for guilt, it's a call for awareness. Swap them out 2 to 3 times a week with fiber-rich nuts like almonds or walnuts. Not just for your blood sugar, but for your bones, your digestion, and your peace of mind. There's one more kicker for those prone to kidney stones. Cashews are a quiet threat. Oxalates concentrate in the urinary tract and crystallize. I've seen it happen. The pain is sharp, sudden, and often misattributed to just aging. So, here's your insight. Just because something tastes gentle doesn't mean it treats you gently. Aging bodies need precision, not popularity. In the next part, we'll explore a nut that's been praised for its elegance and richness, but behind its buttery taste hides the highest calorie density and a silent danger to seniors with dental work, gallbladder issues, or heart concerns. It's time we question the status quo. Again, Part 3, the 5 nuts that may be hurting you. Macadamia nuts. Just saying the name feels luxurious. They're the kind of nut you might find in a gold-rimmed bowl at a fancy retirement party. But here's what nobody's telling you. Behind that rich, buttery bite lies one of the biggest nutritional traps for seniors. I remember my neighbor Jim, a 77-year-old with a weakness for macadamia cookies. He wasn't a sweets guy, but those nuts, he swore they were brain food. What he didn't realize was that these innocent-looking treats packed over 200 calories per ounce more than any other nut. Now that wouldn't be a problem for someone running marathons. But for Jim, who struggled with joint pain and barely hit 2,000 steps a day, it added up quickly. You see, as we age, our metabolism slows down. And while macadamias are rich in monounsaturated fats, they're also dangerously dense in saturated fat, nearly 3 grams per ounce. That's the kind that sneaks into your bloodstream, quietly raising your LDL cholesterol and stressing a cardiovascular system already working overtime. But weight and cholesterol aren't the only issues. Macadamia nuts are rock hard. Seniors with crowns, bridges, weakened enamel, or frankly, anyone who's paid for a dental implant are just one bad crunch away from a cracked tooth. And trust me, I've seen it. One bite, one snap, and suddenly it's not just a snack, it's a $1,000 emergency. Then there's the gallbladder, a small organ often overlooked but critical. Macadamia's high fat content, over 22 grams per ounce, can trigger gallbladder attacks in people with undiagnosed or asymptomatic gallstones. That dull abdominal pressure some seniors brush off after a heavy snack. That could be your gallbladder crying out. And here's a fact most people miss. Macadamias go rancid easily. Their delicate oils oxidize quickly, especially when stored at room temperature. That sour, stale aftertaste. It's not just unpleasant. It's potentially inflammatory, accelerating cellular aging. Even their healthy image is misleading. While studies praise nuts for heart health, many exclude macadamias from their data sets. Why? Because their fat profile is out of balance. They're often tossed in the same basket as walnuts or almonds, but metabolically, they're closer to butter. And yet, because of their texture, their creamy flavor, and their reputation as a treat, macadamias encourage mindless eating. For seniors whose taste buds have dulled with age, bold flavors like macadamias seem more satisfying. But that leads to overconsumption, which leads to weight gain, which leads to a cascade of health risks. Here's a little-known twist. Many commercial macadamias are oil-roasted and salted excessively, adding trans fats and sodium to an already overloaded package. I once ran a workshop where we compared dry-roasted versus oil-roasted macadamias. The sodium difference was 6x higher. Most seniors didn't even notice until their blood pressure spiked. So, should you never eat macadamias? Not necessarily, but they should be treated like dark chocolate, not a daily snack, but an occasional indulgence. Store them in the fridge, eat them sparingly, and always chew carefully. Next, we'll talk about a nut that doesn't just sneak into your snacks, it sneaks into your medications. One that can interfere with over 60% of prescriptions seniors rely on. Its effects aren't just physical, they're neurological, metabolic, and deeply underestimated. The story's about to get even more personal. There's a quiet moment after the video ends, when the screen fades to black and the only sound left is the sound of your breath. Maybe a little slower now, maybe a little heavier, maybe a little more aware. Because aging isn't about decay, it's about discovery. Every choice we make, what we eat, what we believe, who we trust, is a thread in the fabric of our longevity. And sometimes, the smallest threads are the ones unraveling us. Not with noise, but with silence. The nuts in your kitchen cabinet, the habits you picked up without thinking, the beliefs handed to you like heirlooms. This is good for you, but today, maybe you questioned them. Maybe that one idea, that one nut won't slip past your body unnoticed anymore. Health like purpose isn't loud. It whispers. It whispers through better sleep, steadier steps, clearer thoughts. And in those whispers, we find resilience. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight, but maybe today you make one shift, swap one snack, reclaim one morning, rethink one assumption. That's where longevity begins, not in the lab, but in the pantry, in the pause, in the willingness to choose better. And as we close, I'll ask you, will you choose comfort or clarity? Will you keep feeding old habits or fuel new strength? Comment below. I choose clarity. Let us know your age and where you're watching from. We're building a global village of people aging wisely, not passively. Share this video with someone you love because their health may depend on it more than they know. Like if you felt seen. Subscribe if you're ready for more truth. And one last choice, cashew or walnut, one or two. The next chapter of your health story starts not with a doctor, but with a decision. Part 4, practical fixes and eating habits to stay safe. Pine nuts. They sound harmless, don't they? Small, elegant, often tucked inside a trendy pesto or sprinkled atop a fancy salad. But what if I told you that these tiny seeds, yes, they're technically seeds, not nuts, are quietly disrupting the medications that keep millions of seniors alive? Let me take you back to a phone call I got last year. My Aunt Rose, 74, had started feeling off. Her blood pressure was climbing, her sleep was erratic, and her antidepressant, something she'd depended on for years, suddenly didn't seem to work. After weeks of confusion, her doctor asked a simple question. Have you changed anything in your diet? Just one thing. She'd found a recipe for homemade pesto, fresh basil, garlic, olive oil, and pine nuts. She loved it, ate it nearly every other day. No one suspected that those silky little seeds were sabotaging her prescriptions. Here's the underreported truth. Pine nuts contain compounds that can interact with over 60% of the common medications prescribed to seniors, from statins to blood pressure pills to antidepressants. And it's not just theory. Studies have documented real pharmacological disruptions often brushed aside because pine nuts aren't seen as medically relevant. But they should be. Now that's not even the weirdest part. There's a condition called pine mouth, an actual syndrome where eating pine nuts triggers a metallic bitter taste that can last for days or even weeks. Sounds trivial. Tell that to someone whose appetite is already low, whose nutritional intake depends on flavor and smell. For seniors, this can spiral into malnutrition, unintentional weight loss, and emotional distress. According to one study, up to 42% of those affected lost significant body weight within 2 months of onset, and it gets darker. Many pine nuts sold commercially are prone to oxidation. They're packed with polyunsaturated fats, which degrade quickly, especially when exposed to heat or light. The resulting oxidized oils aren't just rancid. They're pro-inflammatory, exacerbating conditions like arthritis, cognitive decline, and even insulin resistance. That's right, your pretty pesto might be quietly fueling your joint pain or foggy memory. What makes pine nuts especially risky is their size and texture. They're slick, soft, and small. That might sound like a good thing. Easy to chew, right? But for seniors with dry mouth, a side effect of over 400 common medications or with compromised swallowing reflexes, pine nuts pose a choking hazard, not dramatic, not visible, but deadly. Even digestion isn't safe. Pine nuts contain enzyme inhibitors that can interfere with protein breakdown. For aging bodies already struggling to absorb and utilize nutrients, that's like throwing sand into the gears. Especially for seniors trying to maintain muscle mass and strength-impaired protein. Digestion is a slow but steady leak in the system. And then there's the latest research. Preliminary studies are investigating whether compounds in some species of pine nuts might accelerate age-related macular degeneration (AMD), the leading cause of vision loss in people over 65. It's not conclusive yet, but it's unsettling enough that some eye specialists now advise their elderly patients to limit pine nut consumption just in case. So, what's the lesson here? It's not just about avoiding danger. It's about understanding your food, like you understand your medicine. Because for seniors, the line between snack and substance is razor thin. And sometimes, the most elegant additions to your plate are the most quietly destructive. In the next part, we'll explore the healthy nut with a buttery flavor and smooth texture that so many seniors love without knowing it can raise blood sugar, block calcium, and contribute to kidney stones. It's the nut that's sweet on the outside and dangerous on the inside. Part 5. Food Identity and the Power to Choose Cashews. They're seductive, aren't they? That soft crescent shape, the buttery texture, the way they melt between your teeth and convince your brain you're indulging in something innocent. But what if I told you that for many seniors, cashews are a metabolic trap disguised as a treat? Let me tell you about George. He's 72, diabetic, and proud of how well he manages it. Eats clean walks every morning, counts carbs. But last fall, during a family trip, his granddaughter brought him a tin of heart-healthy trail mix, full of dried fruit, sunflower seeds, and heaps of roasted cashews. He loved it. Too much. 2 months later, his blood sugar readings were off the charts. His energy dipped. He started waking up with leg cramps. His doctor was puzzled until they realized the cashews were adding more than 9 grams of carbs per ounce to his diet. Not fat sugar. Hidden. Dangerous. Here's what most don't know. Cashews have one of the highest glycemic impacts of any nut. While most nuts are low in carbs, and high in fiber cashews. Sneak in sugar spikes, especially problematic for seniors, nearly half of whom are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And then there's this oxalates. Cashews are loaded with them. Oxalates are naturally occurring compounds that bind to calcium in your gut and prevent it from being absorbed. For seniors already fighting bone loss or osteoporosis, this is like building a house while someone quietly steals your bricks. Worse, oxalates increase the risk of kidney stones, especially after 60. I once had a 67-year-old client land in the ER because his daily cashew habit triggered the formation of calcium oxalate crystals. He thought he was eating clean. He was actually cultivating gravel in his kidneys. But the story doesn't end there. Cashews go through an intense industrial process to become edible. Why? Because they contain urushiol, the same toxic compound found in poison ivy. That creamy nut you're popping into your mouth. It was once toxic. The extensive roasting and treatment strip away much of its nutrients. What's left is a shadow of health cloaked in marketing. And if that wasn't enough, many commercial cashews are oil-roasted, salted, and even glazed. The added sodium burdens the cardiovascular system. The hydrogenated oils spike inflammation. And the sugar glazes. They're candy in disguise. Let's talk about texture. Because cashews are so smooth and easy to chew, seniors with reduced satiety signals or dulled taste buds tend to overeat them. And they are among the most aspirated nuts in elderly populations. That's right, cashews are frequently the cause of food-related aspiration incidents, especially in those with swallowing difficulties or dry mouth from medications. And there's one more disturbing fact: enzyme inhibitors. Cashews contain compounds that make it harder for your stomach to break down proteins. For a 20-year-old with a strong digestive system, no big deal. For a 70-year-old trying to maintain muscle mass and immune function, it's a deal breaker. What makes this worse is the reputation. Cashews are healthy. You'll find them in vegan cheese, clean granola bars, natural snacks. So seniors eat them thinking they're making the right choice when they may be slowly undermining their metabolism, calcium retention, and even immune resilience. So what's the truth? Cashews aren't evil, but they're not for everyone, especially not in the quantities most people eat them, especially not for aging bodies with shifting hormonal, digestive, and cardiovascular balances. And if that sounds overwhelming, here's the good news: you have alternatives: walnuts, almonds, and pistachios. In moderation, unroasted, unsalted, offer the benefits without the baggage. They support your brain, your bones, your blood sugar, and they don't need to hide behind marketing or sugar glazes. But there's still one nut we haven't talked about. The number one danger nut for seniors. It's in nearly every home. It's affordable, it's beloved, and it carries a hidden chemical threat that can inflame your joints, fog your mind, and disturb your blood. We'll reveal it in the final video segment. But here's your hint: it's the only nut that grows underground.